opportunity for both of these teams to make it to Championship Sunday, to continue their path through the upper bracket, and make sure they're going to have a lot more time to be able to practice to prepare themselves for the final day of competition. Of course, as you mentioned, losers going to be dropping down to that lower bracket. They have a lot more time that they'll have to be playing and a lot more dungeons that they're going to have to make sure that they're prepared for, and not as much time to be able to study up on a lot of their opposition. We've got game number 1 here in Halls of Atonement between Incarnation and Aster.y. Let's get it going here to start off the series.
All right, well, let's take a look at the comp that Incarnation is going to be running. We do know that Aster.y is sticking to more of this standard comp. Of course, they're playing the Destro Warlock, which we've seen all of the teams play so far in the halls, but otherwise they're sticking to that Frost Mage and the Rogue, Vengeance Demon Hunter, and Paladin. While we've seen some teams also play that Guardian Druid, and if one team that is going to play that Guardian Druid, then it's going to be Incarnation, right? Dorky being known for playing that bear tank a lot on live servers. So if they have some bear pulls, right, where they go with those triple shards, then I would say that we're going to see a Guardian here.
Yeah, Dorky was really known for playing that bear, especially last expansion before it was popular. Now that it's popular, now that a lot of people are playing bear, you start seeing him sort of He's now the prop paladin. That's been something he's broken out, nobody else has. So I think he's just always looking for something different, something unique to try out. This is definitely a dungeon, though, where the bear, particularly for that triple shard pull, I feel like it's almost mandatory to have the Guardian Druid Incarnation cooldown available for something like that. I don't know other tanks that would really be able to make a pull work like that. It's not just heavy incoming physical damage. There's going to be a lot of casts going off on you as well, a lot of magic damage, and the bear is really the best suited at just mitigating everything, provided you're in your cooldowns.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure both keys are starting, of course, at the same exact time. Make sure all the times are going to be working it all out. But once we get it all together, then we'll be able to be good to go. And as you mentioned, Agura, we're going to be watching for some of those comp differences, because we've been looking at some bear pulls. We're looking at, I think we've seen some VDH and everything like that coming into it as well. So lots of different interests for these teams to be able to go through, and how they're going to be able to grab as much as they can in this first region. And it's like when we first started with Halls of Atonement, Dratnos, we were like, oh wow, we have to like spread out so much through the entirety of the dungeon. When we started seeing those double shard pulls and group stages, it was ridiculous that was possible, and ridiculous that there's enough damage with the warlocks to be able to pull it off. Now there's a talk of the 3, but also the travel time, the time it takes for all those shards to get to one singular location, all the extra difficulties that are going to go into that. So a lot of innovation, a lot more can be figured out for this dungeon in particular.
Yeah, the doing one really big pull and then one small pull versus doing 2 medium-sized pulls, it's really tough to know in which circumstances the one is better than the other. And I am still not convinced either way at the start of this dungeon. The one thing I know for sure is that triple shard is way harder than doing, a double and then a single with the Tormentor, something like that.
It's 33% harder.
It's yeah, I don't know the exact math on it or anything, but I will say it's much more difficult. I'm not convinced it's much faster. I think it probably is a little faster, but I'm not sure. We'll have to see. I feel like there's still space for the start of this dungeon to be done perfectly and for it to look incredibly fast.
All right, here we go. Let's see what these teams have in store as we do see Halls of Atonement get rolling.
All right, well, there it is. That Guardian Druid coming out of Incarnation. Venthyr Guardian Druid having an extra cooldown to do even more damage during that Incarnation is running. Very interesting. You can see Aster.y not doing the triple shard pull. That means they're going to be starting their pull quite a bit earlier, and they're committing that Bloodlust here. While Incarnation, the downside of this triple shard pull that they're going to be gearing up to do here is that it takes some time for it to gather up. You can see Dorky had to go all the way to the left side down there to pull all of those shards, while Cryptix was pulling the shards from the other side, and it just takes a while to gather up. That last shard, marked with a cross marker, just now got into that trash pull. You can see just how much damage there is coming out into the group. With all of those thrash casts going off, they also have one of those gargoyles being mind controlled, and look at the amount of damage Yoda is doing on the Dastro Warlock.
Yeah, Destro Warlock is just so good for this. You're playing these talents where your Rain of Fire is buffed, your Infernal, you're spawning extra Infernals when you spend Soul Shards, and you get to this point in your rotation where every global is just Rain of Fire, and it's got a huge chance of spawning another Infernal, and that Infernal's giving you more Soul Shards to make it so you can just keep pressing only that button. And it works so well when it works. You can see exactly what that looks like on the damage meters there. Yoda just demolishing this pull. Huge count obtained by Incarnation. But Aster.y, they've started their second pull now. Incarnation, they're finishing up their first pull right now, but Aster.y are going to have almost all the same trash done once this pull finishes off, even though they've done it in 2 pulls rather than 1.
Yeah, I actually think this pull did take them too long for Incarnation here. I think it definitely took them a bit longer than what it could have been. It really looked like one of those shards was just not being in with the AoE, and they had to focus it down a lot at the very end there. So it really took them some time to finish this off. Aster.y on the other side, they're already close to done with that shard. One thing to note though is that they didn't pull Arkalef until now. So they were actually going pretty slow here, as the shard is dead, and now they're pulling in the Tormentor. While Incarnation, they immediately, of course, pull that Tormentor because there's no more shard left for them to kill. So all they have to do is finish off that Arkalef here, get the Anima Power. Aster.y now also in that same position. You can see they're now perfectly even again. 55% trash on the board, and we can now see that Incarnation is a little bit ahead, but just a slither of HP on the Arkalef.
Yeah, Incarnation sort of creeping ahead here. It's kind of tough to call who's in the lead, though, right, between these two teams. They're in such a similar spot in the dungeon. Both players' Infernals have become available as well. There are some, Shadow Blades, for instance, that's going to be available on the side of Aster.y sooner than it will for Junkrat. Although it won't really be necessary until we're back to pure single target. Shadow Blades, it's a cooldown you really don't need if you're funneling damage. As we go into the boss here, both teams getting started with Halkias. It's going to be Aster.y starting this pull sooner. Both teams are pulling a huge amount of trash in here as well, though, and we are going to start seeing huge damage coming out from the rogues onto the boss, and from the warlocks onto everything.
Yeah, and Dorky actually gonna have that Incarnation back up right now, using it immediately. So that's gonna be quite a bit of extra damage that the Incarnation is gonna have from that tank. Because whenever those cooldowns are up, then the Guardian Druid is gonna be doing lots of AoE damage. Of course, Aster.y having the advantage though of having the Vengeance Demon Hunter's aura, the magic damage increase. That is going to help the Warlock out quite a lot, and also the Mage, of course, and the Paladin a bit too, and the Rogue. So definitely having a little bit of an advantage from the buff, but Incarnation having more bursts when those cooldowns are ready.
Yeah, also another thing to think about, it's going to be so good for both of these teams when they can manage these spiteful shades like the way that Incarnation's doing it there. You can see the Typhoon actually coming out from Dorky, keeping the spiteful shades under the boss. That's further enhancing the funnel onto the boss for a couple more seconds. And you can see Incarnation have now actually crept ahead in damage, even though they pulled the boss a little bit later. Their count is equal with Aster.y's right now, although both teams will be earning a couple more points of count as these last mobs die here, so that is going to bring them both into that 79% count amount. Aster.y finishing first, and they are just zooming towards the next boss. Incarnation really stalled out the damage here right towards the end. They are going to be able to finish off, though, but it is 10 seconds in favor of Aster.y.
Yeah, Aster.y already onto that next boss. There's not going to be any trash they can really pull on top here. So it's just going to be single target for both of these teams. We'll see what they decide to commit, because look at Aster.y's Holy Paladin committed to the Ashen at the very end of the pull previously, while Yami has that Ashen available for Incarnation. Not sure if he's going to be committing it here or if he's deciding to hold it for the next pull. If he doesn't commit it here, then it's going to be really close if it's going to be ready at all for the last boss. So either he uses it here, and then again for the last. There we go. So now he is using it. So both of the teams not really going to have that Ashen available for the next boss. There's also going to be a crucial pull coming up in just a second. But yeah, Aster.y, of course, being slightly ahead in boss DPS because they did pull the boss earlier. But you can see Incarnation definitely creeping up, and because of that Ashen as well, that they have extra.
Yeah, the Ashen Hallow, a huge damage cooldown, and I'm curious how this is all going to line up at the end of the dungeon as well. This is such a short dungeon. There's probably, maybe if they use it exactly on cooldown, they're going to get 2 more, but I wonder if Aster.y is more likely to get that second Ashen Hallow and get it on the last boss here. That's going to be a big question mark to look out for. If it comes down to a DPS burn on the last boss, and one team has Ashen and the other team doesn't, I can tell you who's going to win that 99% of the time, except for last game where we saw Echo winning despite not having the Ashen.
Yeah, and I would also just say comp-wise, Aster.y just has more single target, right? I mean, look at Dorky's damage on that Guardian Druid without Incarnation, and not having that extra buff on all of the other damage dealers, it's really going to make a difference, right? So Aster.y definitely having a little bit more single target damage. The only thing that the Guardian Druid, of course, did allow them to do is that extra triple shard pull, which in the end really didn't save them that much time. It's also going to make this next pull a bit safer, though, because this pull coming up for both of the teams, that's going to be a little bit easier for Incarnation, having that Incarnation on that Guardian. Well, the Vengeance Demon Hunter is going to have a little bit of a harder time surviving that, but cheat death available for Aster.y, so they should be fine. Definitely have to watch out, though.
Yeah, both teams getting started with the pull here, and this needs to go really well for Incarnation. They do have this could be another good moment for the Bear, right? If the Bear able to use Incarnation on a pull like this means that he's not going to need any healing, that could be an opportunity for to get more damage out of, say, your healer than Aster.y is. Otherwise, it's just really hard to imagine how the Bear comp is going to do more damage than that Demon Hunter comp. You really think, wow, if the first couple pulls that required the Bear weren't even faster, but were just the same speed, the rest of the dungeon then is going to be so favored for the team with that Chaos Brand, with that huge Vengeance Demon Hunter, single target as well, being better than the Bears. Although right now you can see the AoE damage of the Bear in Incarnation is very strong.
Yeah, and you can see Aster.y is ahead in damage in boss DPS here. But one thing to note, actually, is that Aster.y did use one of the Stoneborns. They did mind control it here to get the damage reduction and the extra damage onto the boss. While Incarnation has decided to not use any of the Stoneborns here. This is something we've seen yesterday from both Perplex and Ambition, both of them leaving the Stoneborns up, not using it at all for this boss, making sure they have it for the mini-boss afterwards, and also lasting a little bit into the last boss. So even though Aster.y is killing this boss a little bit quicker, Incarnation having that extra Stoneborn might make up a little bit of a difference later. We'll see, as Aster.y is now finishing off that boss and mind controlling that one Stoneborn they have left.
Yeah, this is going to be it. I mean, it's so tough to see how Incarnation can save this time. They are going to pull, it looks like, both of the Stoneborns now. You can mind control both of them at the same time as long as you're precise with pressing your button. It's a small window where you're able to get both of them. Have they done it here? They have, yeah. So they're going to have 2 Stoneborns to take with them. Maybe this extra damage from that second Stoneborn will be pivotal for being able to do this boss, this mini-boss, quickly. Maybe it's mostly just about making sure it doesn't get to its second Dark Communion cast, which on a 22 Fortified requires a lot of damage to be able to do that. You can see they're starting that burn. Aster.y already nearly done with the burn. The boss is getting pretty close towards that next Dark Communion cast, though. They're going to be able to finish it off in the nick of time, though, as they now get to that last boss. Probably, yeah, something like 20 seconds in the lead here as compared to Incarnation. But Incarnation have held their Ashen Hallow, whereas Aster.y have not. Aster.y have already used that. Incarnation will have more damage on this boss when that Ashen Hallow comes up. Is it going to be enough more? That's the question.
Junkrat did commit that Shadow Blades onto the mini-boss, while Aster.y did not have it ready, so they're going to have it for the boss. It is going to be incredibly close between those two teams. Keep in mind, Aster.y having generally a little bit more single target damage because of the comp that they're running with the Vengeance Demon Hunter. So there's going to be a slight damage favor for Aster.y when it comes to composition, but having the extra Ashen Hallow on Incarnation side is going to be another thing in favor for them. And then keep in mind as well, not having the Ashen here is actually really hard because you have 3 Tormented debuffs here. 50% physical damage increase, 50% healing reduction, and you can see just how difficult it is for the healers to heal them out of the Grievous range. Because remember, there's a Grievous affix, and 50% healing reduction means it's going to be so hard for the Holy Paladins to get those people healed to full HP again. And that's why having that Ashen is going to be so crucial for Incarn. They cannot pop it just yet because they have to wait for those cooldowns to come back up, so they're waiting for the Infernal from Yoda before they pop the Bloodlust, and Yami doesn't want to use the Ashen before the Bloodlust. So they're just struggling to stay alive until they can use those cooldowns.
I don't see how it's going to be enough here with 30% health on Aster.y. Double the damage is going to be required from Incarnation as compared to Aster.y from here, and that is not happening. It is going in the other direction instead. The cooldowns will be coming out, but I think it's going to be too little too late as long as Aster.y can hold on, as long as they can avoid wiping here, and bad turns to worse for Incarnation as Cryptix goes into that pod tender. Aster.y keep the pressure on. They have accelerated rather than decelerated. They are going to kill this boss way ahead of Incarnation, and they are going to secure game one.
Wow.
That right there, that what, about 1150 for that Halls of Atonement run. Probably the fastest run that we've seen yet coming out of Aster.y as they take game number one. That is simply ridiculous there. And this is what we talked about. You know, this is the Chinese region coming out in full force. Probably the best team that we've seen out of the region here, Tettles, and very, very strong in this game number one. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they improved their previous Halls of Atonement run by 20 seconds. So that was a really good run from Aster.y. They were able to get all of their mobs grouped up quickly. I think their first, up until the first boss, that split for them was incredibly quick compared to where they were last time. Oh, okay, so at 11 to 46. Yeah, that is insanely fast. And
Wow.
It's weird because I felt like Incarnation was definitely in a position to where they could have matched them, but their first pull was a lot slower than I think it needed to be.
I really don't think,
So you're saying we can
because
go
you're running the
faster.
Guardian Druid for that pull, right? Like, this is the only pull you run the Guardian Druid for, and if you're not going to make up a lot of time there, then you're just going to be losing out from there on, right?
It can't just be like, oh, this is a different way to do the start of the dungeon the same speed. It needs to be like, hey, this is a minute faster to make up for the Chaos Brand we're going to lose on the bosses.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, except for if you mess up your shard. So, like, their third shard came in super late and ended up costing them.
Though. Have you ever seen that work without it being like that? That's how it worked for Ambition as well. I think that when you're pulling 3 shards, one coming from, over in Revendreth and the other one coming from over in Bastion, it just takes them a little bit of time to get to the same spot.
This is true. That does check out. Those zones are far.
And a lot of teams eventually already go back to where that third shard is coming from anyway to be able to clean up any of the mobs that are there as well. So that just kind of compounds the problem. Well, if you're already going over there, why not just have the shard come along for the ride, or why not just deal with the shard when you actually are moving in that direction? So, yeah, I feel like we keep on getting just a little bit faster every single time with Halls of Atonement here, and absolutely ridiculous that Aster.y is having the fastest time titles.
I do think that if Incarnation is going up against any other team's Halls of Atonement that we've seen this weekend, they beat them. And so it's like that. This is the game of inches that we are playing. And Aster.y shows up big in that first game, in that Halls of Atonement. They improved so much. Like, it was 22 seconds off of their initial HOA. And the first pull here for Incarnation, this was looking pretty good. That Shard of Halkias off to the left coming in from Bastion, like Dratnus was talking about, just comes in super late. Either not enough priority damage or just a couple of issues, and that costs them somewhere in the range of 20 seconds. If it gets in faster, then they could potentially be able to match Aster. But hey, Aster here doing 2 large pulls as opposed to 1 jumbo pull. It pulls Halkias early. Incarnation is looking really good whenever they get Halkias engaged, because that Guardian Druid with the Incarnation able to just sit here and face tank all of this trash, while Aster has to do a slightly smaller pull. But ultimately, I think that Aster made up a lot of time on Echelon. They allowed these ads to resummon. They have just so many of those Stone Fiends on screen. They're just using them to be able to get an insane amount of single target onto Echelon. They allow them to transform back every single time. And then something I did like that Incarnation did here was that gateway. So that gateway allows you to save both of your Stoneborns, where Aster just kind of ran straight through and pulled one of the Stoneborns into the boss, and then pulled the second Stoneborn into Cigar later. I think that that's an adaptation that most teams can probably implement into their route fairly easily. That's going to save you that one Stoneborn, because you really don't need it for high Adjudicator Lees. Dropping that double Stoneborn on Inquisitor's Cigar may save you potentially the Shadow Blades or the Ashen Hollow later on into the dungeon, which is something that is more valuable on Lord Chamberlain, because that's something that you guys were pointing out at the end, the difference in the offensive CDs on that boss. And I think that double Stoneborn does enable you to be able to save something.
Yeah, and again, once being able to look at how these teams have differed in their routes, and there could be even more differences coming up as well, Nagura, because we got the other side with Fort Explosive Raging, which we've seen these affixes as well a couple different times, in particular for DOS. So looking at how these teams are going to have some big differences in this dungeon, which is probably one of the longest dungeons we have in our map pool.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting one because, first of all, the affixes are really hard. It's a difficult combination having Fortified and Raging at the same time. We've seen many teams have difficulties with the combination of that affixes, especially in that Ardent Wield area when you're just pulling 50 mobs on top of a boss and then all of a sudden they're all raging at the same time while the tank has like 200 debuffs from those mobs. So it's very dangerous to deal with it. We've seen a really quick time yesterday though from Ambition, 17 minutes 49. And both Incarnation and Aster.y haven't played this map yet, but they had the opportunity to watch Ambition yesterday. So they might have even adapted something or two if they think that Ambition's route was quicker than theirs.
Yeah, it's a really good opportunity to kind of get a quick check before they have to go into the dungeon themselves, because while we had that 2-week period of all these teams being able to practice and being able to optimize their strategies, you never know when somebody's going to cook up something that's going to make everything just a little bit faster here. So Aster.y up 1 against Incarnation, as the second dungeon is going to be the other side. Incarn don't want to be dropping into that lower bracket this early, having to fight for their own survival. Both these teams want to go into the upper finals, face off against Echo, and try to get into the grand finals from there. We'll see what they all have in store for us as game number 2 gets going.
Aster.y, known for their innovation in this dungeon, that technique of snapping those oils onto the Mana Storm's boss was developed by them, was used in their undefeated, flawless run through the Chinese group stage. Let's see if there's been any further innovation here. Right off the bat in the compositions, we do have a spicy choice by Incarnation. The chicken enters the battlefield. Yoda on the Venthyr Moonkin in the other side. Nagura, what do you think about this choice?
This, I don't know. I think that's very interesting, especially because it's a plus 20. That's like that's the lowest key level that we have in this global final, and we've been talking about the fact that Venthyr Moonkin shines on those really high key levels, or on Tyrannical as well, when you can make the full usage of those cooldowns. But the lower HP the mobs have, the less use you're going to be making from those cooldowns, because the mobs are just going to be dying while you're like at the end of your ramp. So we'll see. I mean, they must have an idea on what they want to do with this. One thing to note though is that the cooldowns are really good for raging, because you're gonna do the most damage at the end of your cooldowns, and that's exactly when the mobs are raging. So maybe it allows them to do like a really big pull in the Ardent Wield area that they might not be able to do otherwise. I'm interested to see what they do, but Aster.y, they're already moving into this Hakar wing actually, as they're doing a little bit of a smaller pull-up. They're seeing the High Priest dealing with those 2 devoted. That seems very small and very cautious, but maybe they're just doing this to gear up for this bigger pull that they're doing now.
Yeah, this is, I mean, Aster.y finished that first pull of the dungeon way faster than Incarnation, but maybe with Moonkin cooldowns, Incarnation can get something cool going here. Aster.y, though, starting now to basically be fighting all the rest of the trash in this hallway. And it's a really tough catch-22 that Incarnation are caught in right now, where, they want to do a big pull and use some cooldowns here, but the next boss is Hakar. And if you're not going to use your Moonkin ramp on Hakar, that seems like the best spot in the dungeon for it, right? So it's tough. They're going to fire off the Ashen Hallow here, that 4-minute cooldown combined with Wings. But Yoda's still holding on to Incarnation and Ravenous Frenzy. Almost 3 minutes into the dungeon, and those buttons have yet to be pressed for Incarnation. Aster.y taking tremendous damage. Anuo 9% lay on hands comes out from the healer onto himself. Anuo nearly dead here. No defensive buttons left except for that last resort, which is unfortunately going to be required here to stay alive. Even still, danger remains on the side of Aster.y as a Hex goes through onto the healer. Luckily, almost all the danger is now through, and they are able to finish this pull-off, but that was sketchy and slow for Aster.y, and Incarnation pounce, pulling Hakar way ahead now of where Aster.y are.
Yeah, and Incarnation is gonna be killing this boss so much quicker than Aster.y because of that Moonkin, right? We do see Yoda still holding on. There we go now. The Venthyr cooldowns have been used for Yoda, so this boss is gonna be melting in just a second. They also have those 2 High Priests coming in, so just see them on the side because you don't need to finish off the High Priests for the door to open. So those are the only mobs you can basically leave there while having to kill everything else to open the doors. Looks like Aster.y did something similar, but they only have 1 High Priest. So similar ideas, but look at how much damage Yoda is doing onto this boss. The boss is already down to 4%, while Aster.y is still on 30. They also pulled the boss a little bit later though, and I would say this probably gave them like 30 seconds of time. I feel like there needs to be more of an advantage later on from that Moonkin, because this is a very similar situation like we saw in the Mists before, right? Where we saw Ambition having that Moonkin and they killed the bosses so much quicker, but then Echo caught up in the trash because they had so much more consistent damage.
Yeah, I like the theory of the Moonkin. I want to know what else it's going to do really good things for, because to me it seems like it's going to be really clunky on the last boss, right? You need damage on your platform, but you also, so that means if you're going to use your Moonkin cooldowns there, you're going to do no damage for all the rest of that boss fight, right? So it needs to be good on some other spots in this dungeon. Maybe you're just going to melt the Mana Storms and the dealer bosses really fast with the Moonkin, and that's what it's for. But I don't know, I mean, is it worth having an AFK player during all the trash to make up for that? I could be. I mean, it's not like this is a bad set of affixes for an AFK player, right? If your Moonkin is just there casting Moonfire on explosives, casting Soothe on raging mobs, and otherwise sort of AFK, I mean, it's not the worst trade-off, right? At least you're handling all the affixes that way.
Yeah, I do think so. I do think it can pay off. You can see Aster.y doing a very similar thing that Incarnation has done here, pulling the Warlords onto the side with the Mage. Now he's going to use Shadow Melt or Invisibility, either one of those 2 things to de-aggro those Warlords. Did he use anything? He had, yeah, Invisibility. There we go. So he's going to de-aggro those. They're only going to be pulling those Raptors into that drill. So same thing as Incarnation is doing right now too. They have the RF pulled as well. So they're just finishing off the Bone Soldiers and the RF. Then they're going to be using their Shrouds and their Invisibilities to go to the boss. And probably also carry those sentient oils in. Looks like Aster.y, yeah, no, they're fine, right?
Okay, Sagadon
really
turned, but I think it was distracted or something. I think it may have been, yeah, just distracted earlier or something, or had looked at them in stealth. I was worried though. Anytime you see Sagadon move, that is danger. Aster.y though, Anuo, 7% health, gets the Blessing of Sacrifice and is going to be able to stay alive. Gets back to his fiery brand if he wants it here. That Raging Power Drill is doing so much damage, but Incarnation already finished with this pull. They are shrouding through, and let's see what they're going to be up to here. Let's see if they've adapted the Aster.y pull of Sigil of Misery on these oils, and then, yeah, that's exactly what they're going to do. Dorky drops that Sigil of Misery, and they will be taking those oils with them on an adventure to the next boss.
Yeah, there we go. Aster.y also doing the very same thing on their side, and it definitely looked like Aster.y was dealing with the trash pack a bit quicker, right? Of course, Yoda not using those cooldowns on that pack means that their Moonkin didn't do too much. Cooldowns now back up though for Yoda, and I would assume that he's going to be using it here. One downside of the Moonkin cooldowns on this boss though is if you're committing the cooldowns at the very start, then you might be killing Millhouse before even getting to Maleficent, meaning that you're not going to get that stun to interrupt the AoE damage. So we'll see what happens here. Yoda popping cooldowns anyway. He did delay the cooldowns a little bit, maybe that was on purpose to make sure that he's not accidentally killing Millhouse here. That might very well be the strategy. They're also going to be killing those sentient oils quite a bit quicker, having that AoE damage from the Starfire Cleave that Yoda is going to be doing.
I love the place that Incarnation have pulled this boss to as well. They've pulled it to one of the edges of the room, and that means that the power crystals are spawning in like an 180-degree arc instead of a 360-degree circle around the boss, which makes it a lot easier to soak them because you have half as much space you need to move between to get them. So Yoda was able to very easily move between those crystals and soak them as that ranged player. And Millhouse, 14% for Incarnation, 12% for Aster.y. Both teams very careful to not actually kill it, and are now dealing with Maleficent. Incarnation, though, dramatically ahead on boss damage here. That Moonkin, the fact they were able to hold on to this lead and then actually expanded a little bit since Hakar, it's got to be really, really good news for Incarnation. It's just going to be about if it continues to work well in the areas I'm most worried about in the dungeon, which is the Ardenworld Wing and then the last boss. The last boss, I'm really worried about what a Venthyr Moonkin does to your speed on that fight.
Yeah, one thing to note about Aster.y is that one of the oils actually came in incredibly late. It kept pulling Anuo in. He had to use his double jump to not get pulled all the way back. I wonder if that was maybe even on purpose, that they used a CC that lasted longer to have like the extra cleave. If that was on purpose, then that would be incredibly fast. You can see it's still alive now when the boss is getting lower and lower. Or maybe it was just, you know, some funky thing happening with the snapping not working out immediately. Either way, Incarnation already on their way back into that middle area, and now everything is going to be about that Arden wield. We will see how efficient they're going to be dealing with that trash there. I would assume Yoda is saving cooldowns for the boss pool, because most of these teams are actually pulling a lot of trash on top of Sayaxa, Dealer Saxa. So having those extra cooldowns there would make it quite a bit safer. But that also means, again, that Yoda has to hold on to those cooldowns for a while, and they won't have that extra damage on the previous pulls.
Yeah, those instant cast broomstick mounts coming out and making these sort of technical skips where you're unmounting, remounting everything nice a lot faster. You could see Junkrat, Door of Shadows instantly remounts. They're going to be skipping a lot of trash on the side of Incarnation here. Aster.y, no such thing happening. They are going to be pulling this trash at the bottom of the stairs. Actually, it looks like maybe Incarnation is doing that while Junkrat is going on a stealth mission. What could Junkrat be up to here? What might he be doing? He's in stealth now. Cast Tricks of the Trade. Okay, now the rest of the team is here as well, so they aren't fighting anything on the side of Incarnation. I was baited by a health bar dropping on the side of Dorky, which may have just been from a skip or something. Aster.y, though, now ahead in count, 7% extra on the board as a result of that.
It took them so long to skip this, actually, for Incarnation. I wonder why they were skipping this, because they're gonna have to deal with this trash eventually later on. So I wonder why it was worth it for them to skip. Yoda actually committing his cooldowns here for Varuth plus that extra trash they're going to be doing. So I would assume that this area is just going to take them 3 minutes until they are at the boss, so the boss cooldown should be back at that point. Aster.y now also getting to that same pool that Incarnation is already on, so we'll see how well they are dealing with this if they don't have those extra Moonkin cooldowns available. Ashen also not available from both of the Paladins, so they're holding that for a later one.
Yeah, a lot of danger in these pulls, especially for your tank. While you have Varuth alive, that healing reduction, you can see Anuo being very careful now that meta has fallen off to not actually take all these auto attacks from those mobs. Incarnation, meanwhile, Junkrat is going on an adventure here to pull as many of these mobs as possible. Has to send the Vanish and the Cheat Death on this pull. Growl on Yummy Pala, they're also in danger, also using every defensive. The offensives are coming out here as well, though. It's going to be Ashen Hallow and Wings. Yoda actually fired off the Ravenous Frenzy and the Incarn on that previous pull, so it will be available in a minute and a half. Probably midway through Dealer, if I had to guess. We'll see exactly how that lines up. So maybe the idea is midway through Dealer, you press it, and then you also get to press it on your platform on the last boss fight, something like that. It's going to be very interesting to see how it works out.
Yeah, the last one's going to be so weird for Venthyr Moonkin. I wonder if they're maybe even sending
2 people to that platform?
the tank or the healer
Yeah, okay.
alone?
So you
and
could,
send one of them with Yoda?
you could do a healer
possibly.
by themselves, right? Like a Holy Paladin
Yeah.
can do it by themselves on 20 fortified without too much help. The problem is the Moonkin CDs are overkill by a lot, but without CDs they might not be able to do it, right? So it's just you know, you're sitting there with just a huge sledgehammer when you need a scalpel.
Yes, that is very true. We're going to see what they do later, as Aster.y and Incarnation both are trying to deal with all of that trash in that Ardenweald area. You can see Incarnation dealing with it a little bit quicker, as they're already moving on to that dealer Saxa pool. So they're going to be gathering up all of this trash here, pulling it onto the boss. Dorky dropping pretty low, though, as he does not have a cheap death available at this point, so they have to be a bit careful. They're also dealing with the hatchling here, making sure that that cry is not coming out. Junkrat finishing off the hatchling, making sure none of that is gonna go off, and now they are pulling everything on top of the boss. Aster.y doing the same thing. Hatchling now down so they can move on. It's so close between those two teams. Keep in mind though, Aster.y, they are ahead in trash because they did one additional trash pull, so Aster.y definitely in the lead at this point.
Yeah, somehow that advantage that Incarnation had earlier has vanished, but Yoda is now pressing Ravenous Frenzy and Incarn, so this is going to be a huge opportunity to catch back up here for Incarnation, gain all that damage, and kill this boss again, expanding their boss splits. Because you look, the boss 2 split they actually lost time on, and they only had 7 seconds of a lead from when that boss died compared to where Aster killed it. They are hoping to get a huge amount of time back here for Dealer to make up for that trash count that they're going to be behind once Aster.y actually kills all this trash that they're in combat with.
Yeah, and look at how much damage Yoda was doing. And most of it even single target. Of course, there's a lot of AoE coming out with that Starfire Cleave, but all of the stars are just being used on the boss, doing so much damage. Zaxa already being down now for Incarnation, while Aster.y is still on 20%, and they even have trash left as well, which, to be fair, they're probably leaving it up on purpose to get some extra cleave onto the boss here, but still, Incarnation definitely having a little bit of a lead here. They have to do this extra trash pack, though, and I wonder if they might be pulling that on top of the boss. I do think that would be really risky, though, because they have those Tormentor debuffs as soon as they engage the boss. So we'll see what they do here.
Yeah, it's going to be the Doors of Shadows to get back through. Incarnation, 30 seconds of advantage on the dealer time. Now they've opened up a 30-second total lead, but is 30 seconds worth the trash count difference here? That's the question. As you can see, Moizala will be spawning, and they're gonna pull this trash. Is it right into the boss? Is that the idea? There's a patrolling enraged spirit. Oh, and Braun knocks everything out of the AoE for Incarnation. No, not what they were hoping to see.
Braun, what? Oh no, and this Enraged Spirit is also patrolling awfully close to them. They have to be careful to not aggro that one. But yeah, you can see Aster.y now also getting back to the boss, and they have already done this trash. So they don't have to kill this one, they can immediately go to the boss. So Incarnation have to hurry up, they have to kill this trash pack as soon as possible. But you can see Yoda not having those cooldowns available, just doing so little damage, basically doing the same as a healer without any cooldowns available. Now they are engaging Mosella, and it looks like they pulled the boss at the very same second even. This is gonna be so close, and it's all gonna come down to the intermission phase. How is Incarnation gonna be able to deal with those visages? Is Yoda gonna be committing the cooldowns, and then they're gonna have a lot less damage on the boss afterwards? Maybe they don't need the extra boss damage. Maybe having those 4 haste buffs means that the boss is already gonna die without any extra cooldowns. We'll see, as both of the teams are now fighting that boss with those 2 Tormentor debuffs on them.
Yeah, I'm so worried here for what Incarnation is going to do, because like you said, you know, you could commit the cooldowns, guarantee the kill on your platform, but you're going to do this boss so slowly, and it's actually going to be pretty dangerous on the last platform with the ads when you get there. That's going to be quite scary without Moonkin cooldown. So I think, I don't know what they're going to do. Aster.y, you can see, have just done so much more damage to Moizala already as they enter that shatter phase. 95% versus 97. 96 now for Incarnation. Yoda goes to a platform and appears to be alone, and it is going to be the Celestial Alignment, but no Ravenous Frenzy. Interesting.
Huh.
So this is okay. I need to commit cooldowns here, but I don't need to commit Ravenous Frenzy. So even though it's kind of rough to desync the two, right? They're multiplicative with each other. It's really good to get them both together. There's just no way to do it except for this for Yoda. This has gotta feel bad though. Gotta be an awkward part of the composition. Meanwhile, Aster getting to their last platform already. Everything's looking good for them. Wezala gripping everybody back in. Here comes all that trash they have to deal with. They have Ashen Hallow. They have Wings. All of those things are going to be available and will be dropped soon here. Incarnation also getting started with all this. Ravenous Frenzy with no Celestial alignment. Everything else, though, is being used here. Both teams just going to try and do as much damage to the boss as they can and kill all this trash. They need to kill all the trash to stop the timer as well. So AoE damage really important here in addition to that boss HP.
Wow, Aster.y down with that so
much
quickly. The trash is already down. And Musala is dead. That was so fast by Aster.y. And it's going to be them winning this against Incarnation 2-0. What a time. 17 minutes 55. Wow.
Absolutely insane there by Aster.y, taking that 2-0 sweep with some blazing fast times there. It was around what we saw out of Ambition on their DOS run as well. Aster.y, very quick sweep, and they are moving on into the upper finals there, Tettles.
My bracket is saved.
I don't think anybody's brackets is making it through today.
Yeah, dude, Aster.y in this run looked just so incredibly fast. I think that Incarnation with this Moonkin on this Ravenous Frenzy, I also thought that both of these teams were looking really good. They played to what their game plan was, and while it kind of looked very similar towards the end of it, there were a lot of different there's a lot of different cooldown timings and different setups for a couple pulls that impacted both of these teams.